scriptures are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
For the Seeker. Broadcasting from an undisclosed location somewhere in the deep and mossy creek bottoms of King Creek, Arkansas. Live from Forest Tower Studios, brought to you by the Fringe FM and KTOK Digital Broadcasting. This is Lighting the Void. And now, your host, Joe Bruno.
That's right. We are broadcasting all the way from Forest Tower Studios in Arkansas. It is Wednesday, June the 13th, and the night is picture perfect here again. A little warm, but the new moon of Gemini is in the night sky. This show is for you, voices of verity in this crazy realm of polarity. Thank you for joining us. Good evening. So don't forget, before we get this thing going, I'm going to need you to fire up your chakras and sync both hemispheres of your brain together and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void. We are live on lightingthevoid.com, KTOK Digital Broadcast, and the Fringe FM, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, all those wonderful places via the Fringe FM. Now, keep this number handy. Like I said, I always mention it because sometimes your internet goes down, and there is a TalkStream Live listen line, which is 701-719-3971, and the call-in number for tonight, if you want to ask any questions or join the conversation, that number is 501-777-5631, 501-777-5631. Tonight we're going to discuss taking the red pill or the blue pill, the long-awaited show I've been waiting for with Daniel Joseph. It's been such a long time since we've talked to him, and many of you have asked to have him back, so here we are. Now, last night we talked to Nox Mente. If you missed that show, it was about dreams and consciousness exploration. That show is archived. You can always listen to that, and we'll also be hosting at Spaced Out Radio this weekend. Spaced Out Saturday, which is a late-night weekend show I do, and we'll be there with the Monsterland podcast with Ronnie LeBlanc. Real quick, I want to tell you guys how I found out about Daniel Joseph. It was actually through a show I did with Jeff Harmon, and he brought up Daskalos, and he brought up Daniel Joseph, and I had to check it out. And if you guys go back and listen to any of the old shows, you know that this teaching is something that I hold very close to my heart. It is a form of Christian mysticism, but Daniel is a member of the Researchers of Truth, and we're going to get into that. I want to say real quick, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is Lighting the Void. And if you can donate to the show, we could really use it because the 19th is coming up quick. And so if you can, bring those donations in. I know to some of you, a lot of the donations we get are kind of scattered, and they're kind of, they're decent-sized donations, but even the small ones can count, because I donate to other podcasts too, and I don't have a lot of money, but the people that I do support, I give them a few dollars here and there. So this is how we do things. It's like value for value. If you find anything of value, you can donate. And if you can't, believe me, I understand. And you love the show, just share it and talk about it, and just share it around on social media or tell your buddy or something. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on the website. Just put your name and email in there. You can become a part of the Void Walkers. It's free. You get a free ebook, a chance to get into the Void Walker sessions and chats that we do for like extra stuff. When we do extra shows, it's subscriber only, but it's free. And if you're going to put anything in Twitter, it's hashtag LTV Radio. And if you want to contact the show via email, it's contact@lightingthevoid. I do want to thank my team. I want to thank Everett Thiemer. I also want to thank Tessa. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. All of your help is much appreciated. So we're going to jump right into this. And I want to tell you a little bit about Daniel. Now, Daniel Joseph is the author and he's the author of Swimming with a Whale and his new book, Diving with a Whale. So if you're a truth seeker like me, then these books are definitely for you. But in this show, we always interview all kinds of different systems and methods and different topics. But this teaching to me is close to my heart. It's truly a diamond in the rough, I feel. But Daniel Joseph is not only an author, but a direct student of the famous mystic and healer Dr.Stylianos Atteshlis, better known as Daskalos, who taught circles of students techniques and hidden methods that can be traced back at least 2,000 years. Now, in his first book, Swimming with a Whale, what you learn about there is a day in the life of Daskalos, as well as aspects and the fundamentals of knowledge he learned. There's also entire chapters dedicated to subjects such as angels, demons, elementals, the seven heavens, the order of the angels, and now he's got a new book out called Diving with a Whale, where he continues the exploration of the teachings of Daskalos and the researchers of truth. And in this next book, the seeker is presented with deeply inspiring mystical teachings and effective practical guidance that can enable them to raise their consciousness to higher levels. So, if you're looking for good reading, wonderful books on the method of Christian mysticism, I don't believe, it's my honest opinion, there's none better in our time than these books and these teachings. There's a lot of people that claim miracles, but, few have actually witnessed them firsthand, and Daniel has with Daskalos and the teachings as well, and how we can apply this stuff in our lives. So I always say this when he comes on. For those who turn away at the first sign of when you hear that word Christian or Christianity and you want to run for the hills, I want to challenge you that there was a true teaching that goes way back, and I really believe that this is it. So he's going to talk to us tonight about the red pill and the blue pill. That's all he's given me, so I can't wait to hear this. And if you do want to call in, remember that the number's 501-777-5631. You can also drop your questions in the chat room in caps, and I'll ask Daniel as well. Daniel, thank you, and welcome back to Lighting the Void, man. It's a real pleasure.
Hey, thank you, Joe. It's nice being back.
I know you're busy. What have you been up to here lately before we get into this?
I'm just doing a lot of writing. I'm doing a lot of seminars. We just came back from Mexico and did one there. We got another one in Massachusetts coming up in a couple of weeks, and then we'll have our big one at the end of the year in October here in Indiana. And I'm always writing.
That's a good thing. I've got your book, and I've got some of Daskalos' book, and I've got some of your teachings that you did on Gumroad, and then I can't wait to get this new book. So I know tonight you wanted to talk about the red pill and the blue pill, which is the old Matrix thing, right? So what's that about?
Well, what I want to do is try to tie that movie together with what happens to every one of us as we go through life, but particularly when we encounter real truth. Because when we encounter real truth, we are offered only two choices. And by real truth, I just mean a higher relative truth than we've understood before. Because no one can complain, or no one can claim to know the absolute truth, which is the absolute infinite reality itself. Thus, all we can do is ascend this ladder of relative truth, as Daskalos called it, to higher and higher levels of understanding of the truth. And so I'm just hoping to kind of give a little meaning to that principle by using the colorful images from the Matrix. Because it's true, art imitates life. And as you recall in that movie, Morpheus is a leader who's freed himself from the illusionary world that humans are trapped in called the Matrix. Morpheus reveals to Neo that humans are living in a false reality, a world of illusion manipulated by forces they neither understand or control. Neo, at this time, believes he's currently working a day job as a computer programmer in a cubicle of a large office. But that's just an illusion, a simulated reality they call the Matrix. Morpheus reveals to Neo that no one can explain what the Matrix really is. One must experience it for oneself. And so he offers Neo a one-time opportunity to wake up from the illusion and experience the truth for himself, or not. It's his choice to make by taking the blue or red pill. And Morpheus tells Neo that all he's offering is the truth, nothing more. If he chooses the blue pill, Neo will fall back to sleep. He'll wake up on his bed the next morning and will continue to believe whatever he wants to believe reality is, and remain in illusion. But as Morpheus promises, if he takes the red pill, he will experience the wonderland of the true reality and see how deep that reality really goes. And this is exactly the same choice we as seekers of truth find when we're presented with the higher truth. If we do not try to understand it, prove it for ourselves, and experience it directly, we will reject it or simply forget about it and fall back asleep in our own subconscious behaviors. In other words, we symbolically swallow the blue pill. But even if we choose to take the red pill and come out of our illusions and to see the reality of where we really are standing, this same choice will be presented to us again and again each time we reach for a rung on the ladder of relative truth, a higher rung. This is a choice we continually are faced with, because the relative truth is only so much of the absolute truth. So we ourselves must climb to reach higher and higher levels of the truth. So we're researchers of truth. So how do we begin to climb the ladder of truth? And what is higher truth? Higher truth is not so easy to reach because it takes a lot of effort on our part. This requires the use of the golden keys of observation and concentration and meditation. First, we use observation to study things. It is through observation we come to start using concentration and meditation. We meditate on something, examine it in great detail till we come to a conclusion. Just thinking about something over and over and over without coming to a conclusion is not real meditation. And it's not real productive either. Unless we become good at concentration, we can't fix our attention in order to meditate. Without the ability to concentrate, we will not have much success in the material world or the spiritual field. So climbing the ladder of relative truth applies to finding the truth concerning God, man, and the nature of reality. To find the truth of ourselves. It applies to our personal and business relationships. It applies to finding our soul self. It applies to everything we will find in the worlds of existence. And by worlds of existence, I just mean the third dimension we're all familiar with, the world of Earth, but the higher dimensions as well. These work at all three levels: material, psychical, and noetical. So comparison. This is a big important thing we should understand, because the only way to approach the truth is by comparison. We compare a relative truth with another relative truth. We compare the truth about time, space, and place conditions in our life to come to understanding that this, in comparison to that, is not as true. There's no other way to approach the truth in the worlds of duality. And the ancient Greeks discovered this. The Greeks had this surefire method to find out the truth of anything they did not know. And they called it logic. Aristotle would later claim he invented it, but he didn't. And it works by comparison, comparing two known things to understand a third thing, an unknown thing. So, for example, in the 5th century BC, before Socrates and Plato, there was this Greek vegetarian philosopher physician who believed in reincarnation, whose name was something like Empocletus or something like that. Now, using observation, he noticed that when you get hot, your skin sweats water. This was one known thing. The second known thing was that water leaks out of holes, anything with holes in it. Then, by logic, he concluded a third unknown thing. Skin must have holes in it. In other words, skin has pores. And he was the first guy to figure this out, and he did it by logic. He didn't have tools to see the pores. He just worked out by logic that this had to be the case. So this logic of comparing one thing to another thing is so important. So in researching the truth of anything, we use observations, comparing things, and with logic come to better understanding of things, thus ascending to a higher rung on the ladder of relative truth. As researchers, we have other ladders to climb. We have the ladders of consciousness itself, which is wholly spiritual, has many, many rungs. Then we have another kind of ladder, and that is of self-consciousness. And there is only one self-consciousness, but in many, many different degrees, from the most primitive personality self-consciousness to its fullest expression as a soul, spirit soul self-consciousness. Now, another thing we discover here in this world, the world we live in, is that these worlds are worlds of duality. where we face forces of illusion and relative truth every day of our life. And again, it's only by comparison that we come to understand the meaning of things. Thus, the world we live in is a world of meanings, but they're relative meanings that we ourselves are ascribing to people, places, and things according to our knowledge. This means that what we think reality is, how we react to that reality, and who we think we are is completely based on what we know. But what we know today is more than what we knew 10 years ago, and will be less than what we know 10 years from today, which means our knowledge always changes. And so when our knowledge changes, by metaphorically taking the red pill, our reality changes, and we change with it as a personality. And so if you keep this in mind as we go through life, it'll serve as a really good guide for us, for knowing that in all of life experience that await us, this principle will be a common element of each of them. Life in this world is constant change. Nothing remains the same. The plants, the animals, and the bodies of humans are either growing or declining. So too our personal relationships, our business relationships, and everything we do is either developing or going into dissolution. And as a personality, we are either improving or not. So what determines the growth, our growth, or stagnation? It's determined symbolically by whether we choose the blue or red pill, whether we prefer to remain in our familiar, comfortable illusions, or if we decide to come up to another rung of relative truth, climb that ladder of relative truth, whether we choose to upgrade our knowledge base and see things from a higher perspective, or stay within our existing mindset. But even if we choose the blue pill and remain in our illusions, eventually life itself, sooner or later, will drag us unwillingly out of our illusions. Because illusions are not eternal, and one day they must change. And what may be a comfortable illusion today can become a most painful ordeal for you in the future. We may have what we consider a true or lasting love or business friendship or something like that, and then one day that person may betray us to some degree, and then we are forced to take the red pill and face the reality we were under an illusion about that person, and that gives us pain, sometimes a lot of pain. More specifically, the amount of pain is directly proportional to our attachment we had to our illusions. So rather than undergoing exceedingly painful experiences and eventual collapse of our illusions, a researcher of truth proactively makes the effort to examine his or her life, and their relationships. But not from the perspective how we want to see it or how we hope it is, but from the vantage point of a detached witness that's in the proper position to see how things truly are. A seeker or a researcher of truth must be courageous enough to reach for that next rung of relative truth, especially concerning their life. And this is all the term raising your consciousness means. This is all the term spiritual development means. It means we are ascending the ladder of relative truth. Because living in a material body in the lowest worlds of existence, it's not possible for a human being to know the absolute truth. And even if they did, what earthly words could they use to express it? But there's some warnings here. As you're about to take a step forward or reach for, come up on a higher rung of relative truth, it's a common experience to be tested, even thwarted from making the advancement. We meet obstacles that block our good intentions in our way. Now, these serve to test our determination and strength. They are expected experiences on the spiritual path. Some of you listening probably are facing such challenges now. At other times, the obstacle is something we set in motion in the past that comes to block us. These could be from past in this lifetime or in a previous lifetime. Daskalos always used to warn us, our ardent desires today may become a stumbling block on our path tomorrow. So what we're hoping for today, what we're wishing for today, we might just get, but we might get it at a time where it's a hindrance and not a help. And even if we pass all these steps, make a good step forward, rise to a higher level, we usually are immediately tested to see if we can hold this new level. So be prepared. So that's just some thoughts I had about the connection between the movie The Matrix and how it really is everybody's experience as you reach for truth.
So it's like we gotta, once we get the truth, we gotta figure out how to deal with it, because it is hard to deal with sometimes. To be honest with you.
Yeah, it brings on lots of changes. Lots of changes.
One question I have about that though is, are there some truths that aren't like just not worth the trouble? For instance, like I'm kind of obsessed with ancient knowledge or where everything comes from. Like, the Kabbalah they have, and I've talked to you about this before, but they have the Hebrew system of Kabbalah, and then, Daskalos has his own tree of life, which looks familiar, but it's different. And I don't know why, but it's like I obsess over trying to figure out the answers to that. And I'm skipping over some of the simple stuff, Mm-hmm. I think it's just too intellectual.
Well, the most important thing is being, is what's happening right here and now. The very most important thing in any incarnation you ever have is what's happening right this very moment. So it's good to stay here now, and whatever has happened before actually is here right now, because your life lessons, your the things you've learned and the things you haven't learned come forward with us from lifetime to lifetime, and they present themselves as our predispositions, whether they're talents or bad habits. There are these tendencies in us. So whatever we've done before and whatever it is, the main result is here now, and it's here to work on or it's here to benefit us. But to your point about the Kabbalah and Daskalos, it's not really Daskalos' symbol. It's the symbol comes from ancient Egypt, and actually the Atlanteans brought it to Egypt. And since Moses was was a Greek hierophant, because he was, he had privilege because he was adopted by the Pharaoh's daughter, he studied this system, and it was called the symbol of life. And like I said, the Egyptians brought it over. Mm-hmm. And he became a master of it. So when he left Egypt, he took the principle of it, changed the names of the centers of the symbol, and presented it as the Jewish Kabbalah. But the symbol of life went on in Egypt. And the Pharaoh Akhenaten was the next guy 200 years later who took it. And through his practice with it, he had a direct realization that there was only one true God. He was in ecstasy. He went up and he had this ecstatic experience, and he experienced it directly. And when he came out of his state, he just said, that's it. This 42 God, animal-headed God religion of Egypt is false. There's only one true God. So he denounced the 42 gods in Egypt, which was a bit of a challenge, because the priestcraft around those gods was very entrenched. They were very strong, and they were making a lot of money off the people. So when he said these are false, there's only one true God, he started a war between illusion and truth in ancient Egypt. And so he went off and built a city called Amara, and dedicated to the one true God, Atan. But the 42 gods had a conspiracy, and they ended up poisoning him up 9 times before they actually killed him. Then they chiseled his name off of all the records, and until recently, we didn't even know he existed. Cleopatra and the pharaohs after him did not know he even existed, because the conspirators got rid of his name and his teaching completely. They tore down Amana block by block, and he was just sort of erased out of history.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I talked to some Egyptologists, and they were like, yeah, that whole, that whole Akhenaten thing is it's just a myth or a tale. There's like one thing about it, and that's it. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm sure that's how they wanted it to be. Like they got rid of everything. And I heard that they not only did they wipe his name, but there was something about how they attacked his family and stuff too. But
his wife was Nefertiti. She had to escape to the south of Egypt, and she tried to set up herself as a pharaoh, but she didn't have enough backing. So what they did was since Tutankhamun Akhenaten adopted Tutankhamun. After they killed him, they were able to prop up Tutankhamun for a few years on the throne, and then he mysteriously dies. And then after that, the conspirators, who were not bloodlines, they were just commoners, the general and the other guy, end up taking over. And from then on, you see a steady drop in Egypt. It just declines. But before that, it was these pharaohs were self-realized people. Akhenaten was a self-realized person. And so he was bringing this, not only he was doing the prosperous thing of Egypt and the state of Egypt, but he was bringing this spiritual truth to it too. But this is exactly what happens anytime somebody brings the truth. You see it with Socrates. They knocked him down because he brought more truth, and so they had him take hemlock. You saw what happened to Christ. And there was a Sufi prophet that said, I am God in one, and they crucified him immediately upside down. The people in power just don't like to hear this. They don't want to change things. And that's just the way it always has been and probably will be forever. Until we're all enlightened anyway.
Right. I know it's kind of semantics, but I had a hard time. I was on a podcast. The podcast was called Healers and Hellraisers, and they were just kind of looking at both spheres. The idea of the podcast was to look at the sinner, somebody that's had a hard life too, and that not to see that they were people as well, and that they had a path and all this stuff. And it was pretty interesting. But I mentioned on that show, Daniel, the Essenes, and I had such a hard time trying to explain who the Essenes were. I mean, I'm not asking you to give us a timeline of these teachings, but if you could briefly tell the history of, what came to be Daskalos' teachings. Well,
the researchers of truth, the first caveman that looked up in the sky and said, where am I? Or looked in the water and saw his face and, who am I? That's really the beginning of the research of truth. And so the researchers of truth, the teachings are perennial teachings. You mentioned Christian mysticism, but it's true, it's Christian mysticism, but Christian mysticism is a teaching about love, nothing more. Christ only gave 2 commandments, love God and love your fellow human beings. So it's a religion of love. So anybody who believes in love, it really is a Christian by that definition. But the most important thing is this body of knowledge has been coming forward. And you see it show up in the Rosicrucians. You see it in the Theosophical Society. It's been evolving over time and being added to. But Daskalos was the first one to systematize it into a system that anybody used, a complete system. Before it's kind of been showed up fragmented because ever since the inception of it, it's been kept from the public for the very reason we just talked about. When people start talking about the truth, those in power try to kill it, and those who speak about it. So it's been very quietly kept silent most of these centuries. But now it's time to reveal it, because there's nobody's going to hang you if you tell the truth. They may not believe you. They may try to kill you with their tongue by slandering you, but they don't kill you with daggers anymore or crosses.
Right.
So it's time. Mankind's reached this place that it can be presented more completely now. So it's just the perennial teachings that have been evolving across all of humanity from the beginning. But these are very specifically associated with the truth of God, man, and the nature reality, which means yourself. When I say man, I mean all mankind.
So what you're saying is, if I'm looking for a linear timeline, and what you're saying is anybody that's actually seeking the truth, it's in all of these different systems.
Yeah, but it's shown up fragmented, and it's not always pure and unadulterated. That's been the problem. But, just to speak a little bit more about your previous question, when Akhenaten had his one true God religion, he had Egyptian followers, and he had Greek-speaking, I don't know what to call them, but they were speaking Greek. That was their mother language, but they were living in Egypt. So they followed him out to Armada. So when the conspirators knocked down his system, most of the Egyptian people went back to Egypt and just took back up where they left off. But the Greek-speaking guys, these guys went out into the desert, and they took the symbol of life with them and the teaching of the one true benevolent God with them out into the desert. So these guys become the Essenes in Egypt. Now, you remember when Christ was born, they had to escape Israel and go live in Egypt. And they lived with the Essenes in Egypt because Christ was born into the Essene community in Israel. After Herod dies, Christ comes back to the Essene community in Israel, and then you know the rest of the story. So the Essenes were the people in Egypt who had followed Akhenaten and left, and they were the descendants on down, but they formed the Essene communities in Egypt. But there were also Essenes in Palestine. So these two groups believed in the one true God. They kind of believed the same thing the Jews did, except they took all this angry, vengeful God out of it. And so the Jews thought of them as heretics, but the Essenes thought of the Jews as brothers because it's a teaching of brotherly love. So,
yeah, it just seems that's perfect. Thank you. I was reading this thing today by, I can never say his name. I guess the Swami Vivekananda, and he was talking about a universal religion. He said a universal religion, it must be one which will hold no location in place or time, which will be infinite, like the God it will preach, whose sun shines upon the followers of Krishna or Christ, saints or sinners alike, which will not be the Brahmin or Buddhist, Christian or Mohammedan, but the sum total of all these, and still have infinite space for development, which in its, I guess that word is Catholicity, I don't know how to say it, will embrace in its infinite arms and find a place for every human being. It will be a religion which will have no place for persecution or intolerance in its polity, which will recognize a divinity in every man or woman, and whose whole scope, whose whole force will be centered in aiding humanity to realize its divine nature. When I saw that, I was thinking about the Researchers of Truth organization, because that's like what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and Daskalos said even more. He's speaking about the very same thing. And he said, he adds one thing to it, and this won't be brought by the priest and the people in power. It will be brought by every human being because it's a necessity. It's an absolute right and necessity of every human being to know the truth. And people want to know the truth. So this thing is going to be brought forward just out of the sheer nature of man, desire to know the truth.
There is a philosophy and a big discussion and a debate nowadays, and they even have a name for it, where they say that the Christ story wasn't really true. It's just a concept, and Christ never existed. But we based our whole time frame on what happened. There are so many people that talk. I don't know what that's about, but I understand the concept of Christ within us. I do, but I'm one of the beliefs that Christ was real, that he really walked the earth,
Christ is not a personality, it's a principle. And when the evolution of man on a planet, any planet, gets to a certain point, the Christ principle incarnates. It happens on this planet, it happens on all planets where humanity exists. And humanity exists on lots of planets, not just Earth. So it doesn't necessarily mean it goes through exactly the same stages. The same stages are there, but the way it goes through it can be a little different. But the Christ principle comes when it's time, when people are consciousness are evolving, because we're on this planet. We go through these stages of consciousness. From the caveman, we were instinctive. We weren't thinkers. We just had this raw emotion, So we've come a long way since then, but we still have a long way to go to reach super consciousness. So the Christ principle comes right at the pinnacle when people are coming out of their, it was coming out of their old levels of consciousness. For him to say, love your enemies, that was just groundbreaking news to people. No, maybe they love their family or their blood, but they love your neighbor. What? Love your enemy? That was just crazy to him. So he brought this whole new level to it because it was time for mankind to receive that kind of information, that kind of knowledge.
Daskalos says his name was, some people call him Yeshua, but Daskalos called him Yeshua, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that was his Aramaic name. In Greek, it was Jesus, but in Aramaic, it was Yeshua.
Do you ever wonder who wrote the New Testament? Have you ever looked into that? Like, I know is it really by the names in those books? Because there's so much hidden knowledge in there. It makes me wonder sometimes,
Well, the way I understand it is, of course, all the disciples, the main disciples, had their own circles who followed them, had their own particular students who were just, after Christ left, who were following John or following Peter or following Paul. They all had their own group. So the Gospels, as I understand, especially the Synoptic Gospels, which are all homogenized to make them come off saying the same thing, those guys, that was written by their followers, not necessarily the main disciple. The only one I think is different than that is John, because he lived much, much longer.
Gotcha. Yeah, and they were all made martyrs too as well. Like all the, John the Baptist, like you were talking about, all the disciples, it seemed like sooner or later something happened to all of them,
Absolutely, except for John. See, John, they caught John, but for whatever reason, they banished him to the island of Patmos in the Mediterranean, where he wrote Revelations. And when he died, he didn't get killed; he just died naturally.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, to me, this stuff is really fascinating. We talk a lot about another thing we talk about is visualization, concentration, those things. I don't think that I know for a fact I don't do enough because I'm so into studying and trying to find out the truth that I can't focus. But if when I was a kid, I could just stare out the window all day. It seemed like and time lasted forever. And everybody says, Daniel, time's speeding up as you get older, but I think maybe it's because we've forgotten how to focus and just be.
That's right. We're always thinking ahead. We're never in the now. Now there is no time.
Like I used to sharpen a stick on the concrete and make like arrows out of it. It seemed like days lasted forever. But now, I mean, it's morning and night like it's nothing, and I got to think it's because I'm not slowing down. I'm not focusing. I'm not just staying in the moment. And everybody's, you hear that a lot from every teacher and every mystic that there is. Be in the moment. Eckhart Tolle's really, fascinating stuff he talks about too. But, man, it's a lot harder than it seems, once you've trained yourself not to do it.
Well, sure, especially nowadays. I mean, we're all multitasking, right? We're all just doing 10 things at once. And that's... there's never the now time. We're always engaged in these things. And just think about it. Our grandparents, what we go through in 7 years, our grandparents didn't go through in their whole lifetime. So for me, it's like every 7 years it's like a whole new lifetime compared to the people who lived before. Never before we had all this stuff happening and we had to know all these things. Everything is so fast these days. It's not like the old days. So I think the time is speeding up in that sense as well. There are some who actually believe time is moving faster. I can't think of the person I read that about, but they had a pretty good rap on why they thought time really was accelerating.
Yeah, well, there's some people that believe the Earth is flat too, and I don't know about I don't know about all that. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody that believes the Earth is flat. It's just there's so many theories out there now, that then they can back up, or they say they can back it up with science and evidence, but. What was one of the first things that, when it came to Daskalos' teaching, that really changed you? Because I know that you went on this journey to find truth, and I guess you had sat at the foot of people and listened to other, I guess you could say, holy men or teachers or whatever. But what was it? What was the first thing that grabbed you about Daskalos?
Before I go on, I have to bite the bait and take the flat Earth thing on for a minute.
Okay, cool.
If we had a flat Earth, everybody would experience night and day. We wouldn't have these time zones because it would be the side facing the sun would be daylight, and then when it flipped, it would be night for everybody, But we don't have that. We have a constant changing of time. So that itself proves the Earth is round. Plus, the ancient Greeks knew this forever. I mean, this wasn't a non only the ignorant in the Middle Ages didn't really understand the Earth was flat. That's what I want to say. But if it was flat, we had all experienced day at the same time and night at the same time. So, but as far as your question about Daskalos, it was just so much. The moment I heard him, well, first of all, he was communicating to me on the way there. I was hearing his voice in my head, and I'd never heard him, so that was pretty cool. But when I got there, he could just immediately tell you, answer the questions you have in your mind. Now, I've been around a lot of, advanced holy men, really, and nobody did this, but he answered, not just me, everybody. He would answer the class's questions without them speaking the questions. And whatever you were thinking, he would just answer it. So you were having this conversation with him at 3 different levels. The ordinary level where you're saying this and he's saying that. And then there's this other level where he's answering the things you're not seeing. And then there's the most beautiful level was it's like his soul was talking to your soul. And it was so comforting. And so, I mean, you just knew it. It just resonated with truth for you. There was that. But I think one of the things that really stood out with me the most was one day he was talking about what he was doing, why he's here. He's talking about all these higher dimensions. He goes there, he can come and go anytime he wants. And you sort of think, well, why are you here if you can be in these higher worlds? And he says, I have to be here. I must be here. I choose to be here as long as there's tears in anybody's eyes. I want to be the handkerchief that wipes the tear from their eye. Wow, when he said that, it just blew me away. I realized I was in the presence of a real master. He wasn't here for himself. He was here for other people. And I saw so many healings, miracles of people that had been crippled for 20 years just stand and walk, and it's nobody charged anybody money. It was just complete. He was so humble. He never said he did it. He said God did it through him, or the Holy Spirit did it through him. So just to see his greatness, the greatness of this just human being, but with so much humility.
That's amazing. I would have loved to seen that. I don't know. I want to see that for some reason. I don't know if that's because I have. Well, I'll be honest with you, Daniel. I always have doubt. It's like if I don't see stuff with my own eyes, or if I can't touch it, see it, smell it.
Sure.
I always have that doubt there, and I want something to make it go away, other than faith. People say, "Well, you just lost your faith." Look, I get that, but I've went around this. I mean, if I would have gotten to witness what you did, I wouldn't. There would be no question, no doubt in my mind, You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even Christ said that. Unless you people see miracles and wonders, you won't believe. And so that's why he showed them. Now, Daskalos, the only ones he really showed, he showed some minor things, but the only ones he really showed was healing, because he said, this is holy substance I'm using. This etheric vitality is holy. And it's not mine. It comes from God. So we're not here to show cheap phenomenon. We're not here to impress gullible people. We're here to heal. We're here to help remove the suffering. And that's really the most profound effect on me, was to see this truth. I knew that, of course, and we know this is truth. If you have money, you have power, you have abilities, helping people is one of the best things you can use for them. I mean, how much stuff can you take for yourself? But right. When if you help somebody, truly help somebody purely without, asking for money or expecting praise or even a thank you, and he didn't. If you thanked him, it was about as much as you could do. He would hardly even take a thank you. I saw people trying to pay him. He never took money. And it's that, and it's just seeing the smile and the relief on the suffering person. That's the reward. It's not becoming famous or money or anything like that. That is the real reward, and that's something you take with you. That's something that never leaves you.
Did he ever talk about what the ultimate plan was for the planet? Did he ever speak about that to you?
Sure. The ultimate plan is the whole planet gets self-realized. Now, what's that mean? Self-realized. Well, we all think we know. If you say, who are you? They think, well, I know who I am. But you don't really know who you are, because who you are, first, if you ask somebody that, the first thing they say is, I'm John, or I'm Mary, or something like that. But really, that's just a name your parents give you. You say, okay, well, I'm my feelings and thoughts. Well, not really, because those feelings and thoughts you had at age 7 is not the same ones you have at age 14 or at age 21 or at age 28. And they certainly aren't going to be the ones you have at the end of your life. So what you think you are as your thoughts and emotions change all the time. And if you say, oh, I'm my body, well, forgive that one, because every 5 years, every cell in your body is replaced. You get a new liver every 6 months, I think, something like that. Mm-hmm. The whole body is changed out. So we can't be the body because it's changing. It's dying and being renewed. Our thoughts and emotions are changing. So who are we? That's the whole point of this, is to find that self-realization, realizing that inner self, which is what you are, what you were, and what you will always be. Who you are is a personality with a name. It's just a mask. It's a personality. And that derives from the Greek word persona, which just meant mask. And so it's just a mask we're wearing this lifetime. Next time we'll wear a different mask. Last time we wore a different kind of mask. Who we were 500 years ago, we can't even imagine. And that 500 years ago us couldn't imagine our life today any more than we can imagine our life in 500 years from now. It's a really great mystery, but the whole point of this search of any spiritual system for raising your consciousness, uplifting your awareness, call it enlightenment, call it self-realization, is to realize the truth of who you are, what you are, which doesn't change. It's that still center point of self-awareness. It doesn't change. Your personality self-awareness change, but the real self does not change.
Can we ever lose it? Like, I had a conversation with someone on their show that was talking about the second death, where we could actually lose our consciousness and identity and be restarted or cleansed through the fire or whatever. But then most people say that you never lose that, your higher self, you're eternal. And
well, first of all, when you say, "Oh, I'm my higher self," your higher self doesn't belong to you. You belong to your higher self. It's that way. So the higher self is eternal. It's a God. Christ said this. You're all gods. And some of them, he said, you won't taste death. Well, he certainly wasn't talking about the personalities, because all those personalities tasted death. So this eternal thing in us is deathless. It's the deathless spirit. So, and the second death is what John calls in Revelation it's not painful. It's not, certainly you don't lose anything. You gain everything. So,
and this system that you guys use, and I've got some of the books here. So I'm kind of asking some of the questions I already know, but I'm kind of asking for the listener, right? Mm-hmm. In this system, you start out with the simple stuff, but what kind of, and I'm not trying to be selfish here, but what kind of, how do I phrase this question? What kind of things do you start to realize that you're capable of?
Love, real love, not the kind of love that's based on your selfish ego-ness. It's like, I love you because you give me what I want. You talk to me, you think of me the way I like to be thought of. But real love, unselfish love, that's the best part of it. But one of the most obvious things, you have to, people want proof, So as you start this practice, what proof does it work? Does it work? So what's it doing for you? Well, it's amazing. It's self-evident. You don't need somebody to tell you what it does. You can prove it yourself. And one of the easiest things you do when you start learning how to use this etheric vitality, you'd start to notice, I don't get sick. I enjoy perfect health. Now, if you overdo something, or if you do something mistake, you're going to get sick. But you can't believe how much strength and vitality you get by just learning how to breathe. Just learning what this etheric energy is that you're breathing in, how to store it in your body, how to replenish it when you need it. Most people, they don't know how to replenish. The only way they know how to replenish it is go to sleep and eat. So this system teaches you how to keep your energy levels up full as much as you want. If you're willing to sit down and do the practice, it fills you right back up.
How much of this practice do you do daily, you think? Like, how much time a day do you use?
Well, really, the basic is you just do 15 minutes in the morning. You do some breathing and some visualizations, and this is the use of the etheric vitality I'm talking about. And at the end of the day, the most important one is another 10 minutes of just analyzing yourself, your behavior. You don't judge yourself, but you judge your behavior. So it's like, was I really as kind as I should have been in that situation? Was there something I said to that person I maybe shouldn't have said? Or maybe if I would have said this, it would have gone better. So by doing that, basically what you're doing is you're reshaping your personality. You're weeding out these things that cause you problems with other people and with yourself, of course. And you're becoming a better person, a more useful person to yourself, a more useful person to the people around you, and you enjoy life better. And these are just the immediate benefits you get from it. I mean, you don't have to figure out how to go through the second exomatosis, the second out-of-body experience. You don't even need to go through the first one. You just learn to be a better self, and then it just comes to you naturally. And that's the difference between our system and the ancient systems. Now, they had techniques. Basically, they were magic techniques. They did have these teachings about becoming a better person. They didn't think about that. They did things because they wanted to be able to control things, and maybe they wanted to help in the beginning, but they were using magic, basically, practices and techniques, but they didn't bother trying to be a better self. And so what happens in those cases is the person usually, it goes along, and somebody makes them mad, then they use it against somebody because they haven't purified their egotism. They haven't get rid of their egotism. So they are tempted to use these abilities to harm or to protect themselves or to get something they want, which is a misuse of it. So usually that's a long, slow, hard way. But this way is a safe, effective, and a proven way. It's just raising your consciousness by purifying your personality. Get rid of those things that are harming people around you and yourself.
I've had that conversation time and time again on here where people wonder why some of these societies remain secret, or they took oaths or things of that nature, and I've always thought it was because it's like the guy that says, oh, well, if I was a billionaire, I would give half of it away. If I was, but have you ever been tempted with that kind of power? Right? Like,
exactly.
Have you ever had a bit? You say that now, but you don't know. Like, so if everybody's wanting to learn how to use magic and all this stuff, but yet they're not, I guess you could say, purifying themselves or fixing themselves like you're talking about, then I guess it becomes what the texts call an unworthy vessel, and everything just goes awry,
Mm-hmm. It all falls apart because what it is it's all about motives. So what's your motive for doing this? Why does anybody want to be self-realized? Why is anybody doing any of this spiritual practice? What's your motive? Well, if your motive is to gain powers and abilities, that's not going to go very well. It's not going to go very far for you because that's not the point. The point is realizing what you are, which is perfect. So it's not about becoming a more personality with a lot of abilities and powers that can do different things that impress people. This is just about finding yourself.
We're about to take a break, and then I'll take you guys' questions. But I wanted to ask, did Daskalos ever mention that when he reached a certain level of self-awareness, and he talks about how he wanted to stay here and just, help the planet and get rid of the suffering and help everybody become self-realized and love. But do you have, and I guess it's kind of a negative thought, but do you have that choice to move on and not stay behind and help?
That's a really good question. That's a very, very good question. And not many people know how this works, but you're working towards self-realization. There have been many self-realized people in the past, and there are people being self-realized today. Not a lot, but they're happening. And what happens to them? They reach that border where they can leave. Technically, they have the ability to leave and not reincarnate, just go on into the eternal realms. Let's just call it that way. So you don't have to come back to these duality worlds. But everyone who gets to that point to reach self-realization, then immediately they don't do it. They come back. This is the Bodhisattva thing in the Asian system. This is the Brother of Mercy thing in our teaching. We call them brothers and sisters of mercy. They don't take their liberation. They'll be the last ones. They come back till everyone gets it. And the way to understand that is, if you were in a house and it was flooding and the water started pouring in the first level, would you run to the second level and leave your child behind? No. You come back down. You come back and take them with you. And that's what these self-realized people do. They reincarnate to retake them with them. They don't always understand, we shouldn't say it that way, but they come in and they do a certain service. So they're willing to go, they free themselves from all this karma, the law of cause and effect, the law of karma. But they come back in to help others. So they're not here doing it for themselves. They're doing it for others. It's a very good question.
But they do. I mean, it's an obvious choice, but they still have the choice, obviously. But when you get
theoretically,
to that level,
but once you get self-realized, then that your choice is the highest choice, which is to come back for the greater good. So it's technically, yeah, they could go, but they never do.
Right. Gotcha. That makes sense because someone wanted me to ask that question, and that was a long time ago, but I remember it. But We're going to take a short break here, and then we'll get to your questions, guys. I'm here with Daniel Joseph. We're live on Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM. We'll be right back. You guys don't go anywhere.
Dennett.weebly.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Reverend John M. Polk from JohnPolkMedia.com, and you can listen to my show, The Quantum Hologram Matrix, every Thursday night. ETs, UFOs, metaphysics, the paranormal, and more are some of the many topics we will cover on The Quantum Hologram Matrix. Make sure you bring your higher concentric multidimensional selves. That's every Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on The Fringe FM.
The Fringe FM has some of the best shows in paranormal, like Lighting the Void, Spaced Out Radio, The Paranormal Code, Into the Paranormal, The Secret Teachings, and so much more.
Yeah, baby!
We're live every night with hours of live original programming. Plus, we air some of the best shows in this genre, and we're not afraid to tell it like it is.
I want the truth!
Check us out at thefringe.fm. Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate limescale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of The Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on thefringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you won't forget. Like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
Do you find yourself bored and longing to learn more about the mysteries and conspiracies behind our reality? Specifically, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific? What a coincidence, because that's exactly when me, Gigi, and my lovely co-host Cortana kicked over the airwaves with just the right amount of intellectual stimulation to give you that eargasm of conversational excellence that you deserve. So be sure to check out our show, Shift Happens, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central. And let's shake some talk radio tail feather, shall we? Right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
My name is David. I suffered from MS, or multiple sclerosis symptoms, since 1986. For years, doctors tried to help, but didn't give me any real hope. I tried almost everything. I was afraid this was my future, but I did not give up hope. 8 years ago, a healthcare worker told me about Regenistem. I called Regenistem. Regenistem explained how stem cells worked. No promises, just a simple explanation of the science. They treated me with respect and understood my journey. For the first time, I felt hope. Now I can jog and snow ski once again. It's been amazing. I have been symptom-free of multiple sclerosis for 8 years. I have learned that stem cell therapy has a broad range of medical therapy, from COPD to chronic pain and diabetic neuropathy. It's an amazing therapy. If you want to talk about your chronic pain or your chronic symptoms, call Genestem today.
Call 305-224-1858. That's 305-224-1858. 305-224-1858.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting, thefringe.fm, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're here with Daniel Joseph, author of Swimming with a Whale and Diving with a Whale, student of Daskalos. It's been an interesting conversation so far. I do have an email question here that's asking Daniel. This is from John, and it says, Daniel, a lot of people talk about elementals, what they are, what they're not. Some people say that they can't die. Is it true that you can never get rid of an elemental? You can only banish it? I'm not sure, there's a misspelling here or something. You can only banish the elemental and have to deal with it until it comes back. That I'm just interpreting what the email says, but it's kind of, the English is kind of bad, I think.
Yeah, well, the point is that once an elemental is created, it cannot be destroyed. Only thing we can do is disempower them. Just think of them like a toy with batteries in it. It'll run around and do its thing, but if you pull the batteries out, it can't do anything. Put the batteries back in, it's going to keep doing the same thing it always did. It's a little program. It's a living entity, and it's programmed by the creator, whatever the thought of it is to do, whether it's a good thought or a bad thought, and it has an emotion with it. So it has a form, a power, a purpose, and a color. But we can't see them, but we can feel them. If you've ever been in a room with people that just got in a fight, you don't have to know about it. You can just feel the vibe in the room. Or you can feel when somebody's looking at you and they don't like you, or versus somebody that's looking at you and they do like you. Right. You can feel these things. But what he's talking about is that, yeah, you can't destroy them as a form, but you can disempower them. And then that is banishing them, but banishing them for good. You'll see people who have desire to quit smoking, and maybe they struggle against it, which just feeds the elemental. But if they really just forget about it for a while, it stops bugging them. It stops coming and knocking at the door to get their energy, because they feed on our energy. The energy we give them by our thoughts, emotions, and the number of times we repeat them. And that's how they get big. That's how they get so big that they can take over the personality. That's how they get so big they form addictions. That's how they get so big they form obsessive-compulsive disorders. That's what's driving these problems in society, the addictions and the obsessive-compulsive disorders. It's the repetition of these elementals until they get to the point, and every time you repeat them, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and at some point they become such a big group of elementals that they're stronger than the personality, so they dominate the personality. And that's what the addictions and OCDs are. But there are ways. I mean, Daskalos teaches the ways. There's 3 steps to get rid of them. And the first one is the hardest and maybe will take the longest. And that is just convince yourself you're not interested in that behavior or thought or feeling anymore. So you take the energy out of it. Then the second step, which is just as important, is you have to not repeat the behavior, of course. And then the final step is to replace that behavior with something else. A lot of people fail at that last step because they decided not to do it. They've stopped repeating behavior, but they haven't replaced that behavior with something else. So it's always like a empty socket that old elemental can come back in and reconnect. And you'll hear this story a lot. People stop smoking 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and they have 1 or 2 cigarettes, and boom, they got the full habit back again. That's just proving that they're putting that life back into that elemental form, and it's just reactivated again.
Interesting. That's funny that you say that, because I've had my own struggles with that. And if you don't replace it with something, you can definitely feel it. And I think that, I read like Robert Monroe's book, and he talked about, people that were, I guess, stuck in the astral realm, or have I ever talked to you about that or asked you about that, about people that are stuck in between these realms or something? I don't remember if I have.
I don't think you have, no.
But he would run into these people, and they would still have, even in their, I guess, astral form or whatever you want to call it, would still have these energetic addictions to cigarettes or sex or alcohol. And
Sure.
he would catch them in bars or doing stuff, still trying to feed that addiction, even in the other realms.
Absolutely. And Christ said this, whatever you bind on earth, you will be bound to you in heaven. So, I mean, if you binding, if you have this strong attachment to gambling or drinking or something, you pass over, you're going to find yourself with that same habit. So it doesn't go away. You have to stop it.
That's kind of scary.
The other thing is, the other thing is that, but you only see that now the psychical world, when you pass over, you enter the psychical world, and it has 49 planes and subplanes. But you only see that kind of behavior on the lower 14. You don't see it on the higher ones, because in the higher planes is where you see the paradises. But people are still bound in their shell hells on these lower 49 planes. Daskalos always had this friend, and they loved each other very much in school, and they liked sitting next to each other. But when they got older, the guy had this bad habit of gambling. And so he would go to this smoky little coffee shop. Daskalos said it was so smoky that you could write your name on the window. It was just so choked with smoke. But there was only about 5 to 6 tables in there, and these men would sit there and drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, and gamble into the wee hours of the morning. Well, one day, the guy's mother called Daskalos and said, well, can you help my son? He's really just he's ruining his life by hanging out in these bars all night long. So Daskalos goes out, and he finds the guy in the bar, and he tries to convince him to leave. He said, no, quit bothering me, go away, And so he could never get him to leave the bar. The guy gets tuberculosis or something and passes over. So I think it's 50 years later, Daskalos visits him on the other side. He's in the exact same bar doing the exact same thing. He's still got the habit. So Daskalos, he loves him. Daskalos loves him. So the only way we can help people, whether it's in this world or in the other world, is, again, by what I was saying earlier, by comparison. So Daskalos loved this guy, so he decides to take him out and show him where he could live instead of just living in this smoky bar gambling all the time. And now he's created elementals of those people he knew. Those aren't the real people he's gambling with, but they're elementals he has created of those people. So he's experiencing them as if they're the real people. And he's just repeating this for 50 years, right? So Daskalos takes him out. He takes him into the countryside. And on the other side, it's just your thought creates things. So Daskalos created with his thought some classical music. It's beautiful paradise and nice music playing. And the guy, he says, it sounds like kicking cans. This music is horrible. He said, just take me back. I want to go back to where I like. Why are you torturing me? So the guy felt tortured. Now, this is showing you that when we go to the other side, or even on this side, one man's hell is another man's paradise. What's a hell for us might be a paradise for somebody else. What's a paradise for us might be a hell to somebody else. So this is showing us that hells are not places; they're conditions, and there's no boundary between a hell and paradise. You can be in the same place, and one guy can be in his hell, and the other guy can be in his paradise. So, and this is the trouble. The invisible helpers, the people that Daskalos uses to help people on the other side, they run into all the time. The person just won't leave their hell, and so it's a great, well-known truth that no person after passing over goes into any hell or paradise they're not already know on this side. And it's the same thing on the other side. Nobody can keep them in that hell if they decide to leave. But the trouble is they don't decide to leave. And so by the same token, nobody can take somebody out of a hell unless they're willing to leave. And that's the difficulty the invisible helpers face on the other side.
If you guys
we face it on this side too.
If you guys want to call in and ask a question, the number is 501-777-5631. I don't know. I guess radio's grown away from phones now, unless you're talking about conspiracy, which I try not to get into too much. I got a Facebook message here from Chad, and he's asking, earlier that you mentioned etheric vitality. What does that mean?
Well, you have it at different levels, but let's just talk about the basic one. I was talking about the health of the material body. Well, the material body has an etheric counterpart, an etheric double. It's not an etheric body. It's the double of this body. And just as I said before, you know, within 5 years, every cell is replaced in your body. You're moving around. You're going here and there. How do you do that? I mean, there can't be any movement unless there's energy. So this etheric vitality is what's giving the body energy. And the normal people, like I said, only know how to get it through eating or drinking or sleeping. But their breathing practices from India, and our breathing practices, there are breathing practices and meditations where you can draw in vast, vast quantities of stuff and recharge this. So the etheric vitality is simply the energy of the material body I'm talking about. Of course, there's higher levels of this, but we're just talking about the one associated with the material body right now. It's invisible, but you can feel it. And for example, if you ever had a warm hug from somebody, you know, you can feel that energy. And we give it to each other all the time. When we shake hands, we exchange etheric vitality with people. When we glance deeply in somebody's eyes, we exchange etheric vitality. When we speak, we're sending out etheric vitality. Well, all this energy has to come from someplace, and it's coming from this etheric double of the material body.
I wonder if that has to do with alchemy. You know, like, I don't know much about alchemy, but I had someone tell me that alchemy is not about, you know, doing all the changing this into that with, you know, Bunsen burners and chemical sets. It's about changing your energetic nature. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, it's certainly not about changing one metal into another. It's about changing. You know, they were always trying to change in the mid ages. They were trying to change lead into gold. Well, the idea of real alchemy is when you change the lead of your heart into a gold heart. You know, a loving, unselfish heart. Instead of the lead of selfishness, you change it into gold. So that's really the true alchemy. And, of course, there's an energetic component to that. Yvonne is asking, is a person aware they are in a hell kind of, or do they kind of know how to end, I guess, how to end such experience? I think, so I think if someone was in that situation, because that is a scary thought, so I'm with you on that, but if they're in that situation, how could they end it themselves if there's no one there to help?
Well, there's plenty of people on the other side to help. There's lots of invisible helpers. There's even angels that materialize bodies on the other side. You don't see them so much here, but they're much more active on the other side, and they're always there trying to help. And there's also this other thing. Our journey is the journey of the prodigal son. We're supposed to go out and suffer and have our experiences and come back home. So even a person who's stuck in their hell, they can stay there for a very long time, but not forever, because they're pulled back to the soul before they're reprojected out as a new incarnation. So they just delay it. They don't get stuck forever, but they just delay it. And of that person like that, the point of it is that person was in his paradise. He wasn't feeling like he was in hell. That was his paradise. And so.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that's the whole thing. When we pass over, we create our paradise. But it may be a total hell for you, but it's their paradise.
Gotcha.
Or our paradise could be an absolute hell for somebody else.
501 area code. You're on the air with Daniel Joseph.
Hey, Joe, Daniel, this is Chad Warren. Totally enjoying the show. First time listening live. Just here and there, you're talking about like life essence. I was hearing. I like the idea that kung fu is just anything that you do well. That's your kung fu.
Are you talking about like etheric vitality or your life essence? I think is that what you're talking about?
I'm using that as a synonymous term. Maybe that's incorrect.
No, that's cool. I got you.
I'm interested to hear from Daniel. I'm interested. I think the zeitgeist of this time, obviously, as we're talking of the internet, just the expansion and ability of these different communities to hear each other and have this wider understanding, this transpersonal growth, some kind of communion between us despite our differences. I want to hear what Daniel thinks. Does he have hope that somehow it past all this kind of internet addiction and the dark sides of all that? Does he have a hope that, will really change how we live together?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I have a lot of hope. I see a lot of good things, and I see a lot of challenges. But even in the bad things, that's the whole great thing about what's happening to anybody, is that even the bad experiences lead you in the right direction. And let's just use a simple thing. Right. A little child goes out and his parent says, "Don't touch the stove, it's hot." He touches the stove and he gets burned. Well, that's not a good experience. It's a bad experience, but it might save him from worse experiences in the future. So even our most painful ordeals have a great blessing in it if we can learn the lesson of what the ordeal is. But slowly, life takes us forward. It drags the unwilling, but it leads the willing. So absolutely. And just think about it. We're all talking about these different things, and it's this thing or that thing or this guru's thought or this kundalini thing or kung fu, whatever you want to call it. We're all trying to describe the same reality. We all have different methods and different approaches, but we're all trying to describe the same reality. It's like the 7 blind men touching an elephant and trying to describe it. We're all describing it from our angle. And that was one of Daskalos' beautiful statements, I thought. He said, the great light, the truth is like a great light that penetrates this gem, and colors gleam from every side. Mystics, messengers, and sages from all generations, all cultures, all times have spoken about a different facet of this common eternal truth. So that's all we're doing. One day we'll grok it and say, "Oh, wow, we're talking about this same eternal truth."
Yeah, it does seem like our tools that we create for communication, say like the internet, right, which is a great way for us to do what we're doing now, to help enlightenment, to help self-awareness, and it could become a great thing. But then, you could get on social media and easily see how, we've used it against ourselves in a lot of ways with news and disinformation and polarities and pick a side, choose a side. And just like the other day, I said I didn't really believe in Bigfoot. I wasn't quite sure. And someone commented that, "Oh, I'm done. I'm not listening anymore. I'm not listening to the Bigfoot bashing." And I never trashed Bigfoot. I just said I wasn't sure about it. So that's the polarities we're dealing with because of this internet thing,
Well, it's not just that.
I'm loving it.
Thanks, Chad.
It's not just that. We're in the world of duality. Everything is dual here. Nobody can say anything that somebody doesn't say the opposite is true. This is the world of duality. Hot, cold, black, white, dark, light, up, down. We're not going to get away from that. But the idea is to synthesize. This is the ladder of relative truth. We keep stepping higher and higher, and pretty soon we finally get the big picture. But right now we're just being knocked around by the dualities. It's this or it's not that,
Yeah, so that's all I was saying is I wasn't sure about it. And I don't know. I'm with Chad on that too, because it does seem like hopeless sometimes. But then again, maybe we're just focused on the wrong things. I've seen people do mass prayers, like when people do. There's all kinds of meditations going on right now that we're not aware of. When I'm saying that, and Daniel probably knows what I'm talking about, there are people right now who are doing everything they can, and they're meditating in secret. They're doing it at the same times. They're actually fighting for the enlightenment of this earth. Do you know what I'm talking about, Daniel? I mean, there's people doing that
sure.
all over.
Yeah, I mean, for many, many decades, there's been groups that just by themselves, I mean, they're all over the world, but wherever you are at 9 o'clock at night, you just sit down and you do a prayer for the earth and envision it being just flooded in rosy light, and pray for peace on the earth. So everybody in their own time zone is doing this. So it's like this beautiful rosy light sweeping across the globe every day in everybody's time zone. It's been going on for decades, but very few people talk about it.
So what do you think? Do you know, do you still speak to Daskalos? I know that's kind of a personal question, but he's got to still be here somewhere, right? He said he would be.
Yeah, he didn't go anywhere. I mean, you can't see him in his body, but he's still here. as he always promised he would be. But yeah, I talk to him, but it's when he talks to me that's much more interesting for me.
Gotcha. So we all have this, according to Revelations, it says that God will give us a new name and only he and God will know that name. So do you think that that's a literal thing? It's not, like we have a higher self. Obviously, you said that already, but we have this name that we've always had that maybe we just don't know what it is.
Sure.
That's
you
so
know
fascinating
what it is?
To me.
You want to know what it is?
Yeah. What is it? God? Is that what you're going to say?
No.
Okay.
You're saying it all the time, but you don't even. It's so beautiful because it's hidden right under our nose. When somebody says, "Who are you?" you say, "I am Joseph." That's the whole truth. The I is your spirit, the am is your soul, and Joseph is your personality. I am Joseph. The name of everybody is the I am. It's the pure self-awareness. That's the name. Everybody's got the same name. That's the new name.
I am that I am. That's fun.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
get that
that's
now.
Right. Yeah.
So does that mean when I make a statement that I'm angry, or if I'm jealous, or I'm happy, or I'm sad, at that moment, is that what I am, or am I just going too deep? I think.
No, that's what your personality is. Your soul never gets angry. Your spirit and your soul never get angry. They never get jealous. They're never lost. They're never darkened. They're not high. They're not low. They're not young. They're not old. They're eternal. So it's only the personality that goes through those dualities.
Oh, here's a good question from. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The soul is at oneness. It's at peace. It's forever free and never bound. It's just our personalities that suffer.
Gotcha. Okay. This is from Paul. He said in the esoteric teachings, Daskalos talks about the human body that consists of 7 elements: 4, earth, water, fire, and air. But he said the remaining 3 are of a higher magnetic natures. Do you know what those are? It's
the different states of the ethers, which he's referring to. He's referring to the magnetic and the electric and those states. Daskalos doesn't really talk much about the higher ones because it's not so important to us right now. But just to know that the etheric alone is enough to know about that. We have this etheric double. We can use it. That's what causes healing. It's just flooding. The first thing a healer does is flood these people with all this etheric vitality, and that's what restores the diseased organ. They empower that etheric counterpart of the organ with enough energy, and it rights itself, karma permitting. No healer has ever healed anybody. It's the Holy Spirit that works through them. And people, the illness is not a mistake. It's under the law of cause and effect, under the law of karma. So if that person has enough karma for someone to take a little portion of it off and there can be a healing, then it happens. But no one can guarantee a healing from anybody else. It has to do with the law of cause and effect.
I was just fixing to ask you that about cause and effect, because I've always looked at that as a hermetic thing, because, I mean, hermetics is just hermetics, but cause and effect, is that strictly talking about karma, or is that talking about our choices here and now, or both?
Well, certainly our choices here and now create our karma, don't they? So it's both. The law of cause and effect is the same thing as, Newton saying, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Or Christ said, what you sow shall you reap. Scientists call it the laws of cause and effect. And it's a good name for it, because and here's the important part, is the cause, the effect is never greater than the cause. That's why the stupid teachings that have been presented as Christianity, saying, if you sin in this lifetime when you're only 100 years, you don't even live 100 years, and you sin, you're going to be condemned to eternal damnation. Well, that goes against the law of cause and effect, because it's exactly proportionate. The cause is exactly proportionate. So it's blasphemy, really, to even say that somebody could sin for 70 years and then be eternally damned. It's just stupid. Can't be accepted.
So even the biggest, worst sinner, I'm talking about evil-natured person, could eventually is going to come back around full circle?
to the proportionate amount that they can handle. For example, we always hear Hitler killed 6 million Jews. Okay.
Right.
How's he going to be killed 6 million times? That's just not possible. How is he ever going to pay the karma back? Well, it turns out, and this is true for every one of us, that God takes 90% of our karma. He carries the cross, 90% of the humanity's karma. All we have to do is carry 10%. So what a healer does is he goes and working under this law of cause and effect, and if it's allowed, he can take 10% of that 10% of the person. So, for example, if a person's karma was 100 units, well, Christ takes 90% of it. So the person is really only carrying 10 units of that karma. Now, a healer goes up and he takes 10% of that person's karma. So he's taking 1% of the original karma. But then immediately, Christ lifts 90% of that person's karma. So really, the healer is only shouldering 1%. I mean, 0.1%. It's a very small amount. And healers who can work in this capacity, and I don't mean just fake ones, I mean the real guys, they know how to burn that up. They know how to burn the karma off. There's mechanisms for burning the karma. So it's a very small amount they take, and it just shows you the mercy of the system.
What about, I did a show last night, Daniel, about our dreams. And can our dreams just last night I finally had a dream. I remembered I had a dream that I was in the 8th grade and I was back at my old school and I was watching a play, and these people in the play were talking about some weird things about fear. But do you do that at all, dream interpretation? It seems too chaotic to even bother with it sometimes to me.
Well, Daskalos would always say there is no such thing as dreams. These are real experiences we're having on the psychical plane. But the trouble with it is, and this gets back to the etheric vitality, there has to be a bridge between the material brain and what you're doing on the psychical plane for you to remember it properly. Otherwise, he gives the analogy of a film-type camera where you take a picture and you used to have to turn the roll to the next frame and then take the picture. He says when you come back without that bridge, it's like you've taken all the pictures at the same time, so it seems jumbled, but when it's occurring, it's not really jumbled. There's an order to it. There's a progression of sequence. Now, there's different kinds. There's a lucid dream where you're awake. You're not just dreaming. And what we're calling dreaming is just the parade of subconscious images manifesting in the psychical plane. So we see them. So if you're good at knowing your own mythology, which means knowing what things mean to you, what Uncle Ernie means to you. What's he mean to you? If you're dreaming of Uncle Ernie, what's he mean to you? Right. So you have to learn your own mythology about what these people and things mean. For example, in the United States, you dream about a snake, that's an evil sign. But if you're a Hindu, it's a sign of Kundalini, it's a positive sign. So there's cultural overlays here too. But if you're studying yourself, you can study these things, because even if it's a subconscious dream, there's symbolisms in there that can really guide you and help you.
Gotcha. I wanted to ask this question too. There's a lot of talk about who Lucifer really is. As some people say he's Satan, some people say he's a fallen angel, some even say he's the actual good guy. Does Daskalos have any thoughts on this?
Of course, yes. There are no bad true. He's an archangel. There's no bad archangels. The fallen angels, they didn't even become angels before they fell. I don't know if I should if I got time to run you through the whole thing, but
yeah, you got plenty of time. We got about 30 minutes left. We have to take another break, but yeah.
Okay. Well, in the beginning, which is eternal, when God had the will pleasure to manifest everything, the beings in the multiplicity of God resonated with his will pleasure. So these eternal spirit beings that compose God, they're very similar to God. They're in oneness with God. They feel the will pleasure to manifest themselves. So they come out. They extend a ray of themselves out of this state of perfect unity and at oneness with God. And they go through things called archetypal ideas. Well, the first one these beings go through is the archangelic archetype. And here they get classified into the different orders of archangels. Well, these fallen ones because now all these beings have free will. So they're doing it not because God willed it, but because they willed it too. They want to cooperate with God. So it's their will too. But because there's free will, those beings don't have to go through that archangelic idea. So the fallen ones divert and they turn. They refuse to go through it. And immediately they drop. They're deprived of their creative powers. They don't have creative powers like the true archangels do. So they drop and they fall into these worlds of existence, but they can't materialize. They can't come into matter, the material world. They can't come into the psychic world or the noetic world. But what they can do is they fall and they hang out in the etheric counterpart of these worlds, and they influence people. And just as an archangel, when it creates an elemental or a projection, it's an angel. But when these fallen ones create a projection, it's a demon. And all these demons can do is influence people, but they can only influence people who vibrate in harmony with them. So if you're an angry person, yeah, you can be influenced by one of these demons. But if you're not an angry person, no angry demon can influence you.
Gotcha.
It has to do with the purity of your heart. And Daskalos was always telling us the best protection from anything is a pure heart, because those lower negative things can't touch you. So these guys have just circumvented the divine plan to go through this archangelic idea, and other beings go on to go through the human idea, and that's what the human race is. So it's a great pantheon up there, and down here too.
Okay. I got just a few more questions we're going to take, and then we're going to wrap it up. We're going to take just a short break, guys. This is a real interesting conversation. Got a lot of live listeners tonight, so
I didn't really answer the question about Lucifer, though.
We'll answer that when we come back. I want to hear this one for sure. We'll be right back, guys, with Daniel Joseph.
You're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Want to know what's on The Fringe FM? Check out our schedule at thefringe.fm.
At The Fringe FM, we value your opinion and we want to hear from you. Love a program? Got a future guest or show idea? Let us know. Email us at talkback@thefringe.fm or leave us your thought by calling 501-777-5631 or message our Facebook page at The Fringe FM.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Duval, Lon Duquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Shipping and processing, return postage extra, auto ship and other terms apply. Ladies, here's a number that could really scare you. It scares me. 46. That's 46 million women who suffer from hair loss. That's more than 1 in 3 of us. If your hair is shedding, breaking, thinning, even falling out, you need to do something about it now because it will get worse. Some of the hair you lose will never grow back, so you can't afford to wait any longer. Here's the good news. Keranique, the #1 women's hair regrowth system in America and bestseller at Ulta stores nationwide that's clinically proven to thicken, strengthen, and repair hair, is letting 1 million women try Keranique risk-free through this special radio offer. Just dial *243 on your mobile phone to try Keranique risk-free for a full 30 days. You don't have to accept hair loss. You can take control to reverse hair loss and grow back your hair. Just dial *243 right now to start regrowing the thicker, fuller hair you love. Dial *243 to try Keranique for yourself risk-free. Hurry, this offer will not last long. Dial * and the number 243. Dial *243.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
How you doing today, guys? This is Garrett Lee.
And this is Randy Warner.
We're the hosts of Healers and Hellraisers, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hi, folks. Let's wind the clocks back 60 years. Food was different. Food provided health and nutrition, and using supplements was minimal. Unfortunately, now we have chemicals, GMOs, herbicides, and pesticides that can be quite lethal in the name of our food supply and, of course, the ever-loving dollar. Supplementing our diets can be very important to stay healthy. Cleansing from daily intruders to the body might be critical. Live strong and take charge. Log on to getthetea.com. Our herbal tea is a great way to cleanse from intruders. Our supplements is a great way to maintain and improve your health. When your health is not up to par, go to getthetea.com. No GMOs, no fillers, and organic, and very helpful in keeping you at the top of your game. Life is too short to feel, you know what I mean. Stay in the game, at the top of your game with getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Again, getthetea.com.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
This is Cortana from Shift Happens, telling you to pour a glass and park your ass because you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Shifthead.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're here with Daniel Joseph. We're at the last part of the show, so if you got any questions, if you want to call in or you want to send a question in the chat room, the call-in number's 501-777-5631. You can hit me up on Facebook Messenger if you have a question like you guys have been, or in the Spreaker chat, or in the Fringe FM chat as well. And as we were going into the break, I was asking a question about Lucifer, and I kind of cut him off there before he could actually tell you who Lucifer really was, and I'll just let you take that away, Daniel.
Okay. He's an archangel, and he, as you know, everybody says, it says in the Bible, he's the bearer of light. Well, what's that mean? He's the bearer of light. How can he be evil if he's the bearer of light, right? Well, what he is the keeper of the law of cause and effect, the law of duality. And now, that's what causes us the problem, isn't it? We suffer through this duality. We suffer through the law of cause and effect. We suffer karma. So maybe we should think about him as like a policeman. Now, if we're breaking the law, a policeman's a bad guy. But if we're upholding the law, maybe the policeman's a good guy. In principle, I'm talking, So Daskalos says it's best not to try to connect with him or think about him. He's the keeper of the law of duality. So he brings very painful consequences to people when they break the laws, not as a punishment, but to wake people up. So I think that's where he's got the bad rap. But again, it's not necessary to concentrate on him or think about him at all. We have plenty of just archangels we could contact who don't express the duality. They only know love. But this guy's job is to keep the law and order, basically, in the lower dimensions, in the worlds of duality.
Does astrology play a role in this at all? Like, I don't know if I've talked to you about that before, but I've always wondered about the other planets and if Daskalos ever mentioned them in any way.
In terms of astrology, of course, yeah, there is an effect. I mean, you can tell the moon has an effect on Earth. It draws the tides up. But consider this. You can find somebody that's born under a certain sign on the same day, at the same hour, at the same minute of the day. And when certain planets line up, one of those people feels real creative, and the other one is easily agitated. Why is that? Okay, there's an influence on them, but what's in that personality, what makes that personality up, and I'm talking about the elementals, I'm talking about their emotions and thoughts, that's what's really the PowerPoint, because the influence comes in, but if you get full of negativity, you're just going to feel agitated. But if you're a creative person, you'll feel inspired maybe. So it has an effect, but it's small compared to the effect of just the thoughts and feelings we allow ourselves to harbor and express.
And the archangels that you speak of, that's obviously, and everybody knows who they are. It's Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, right? So are they always with us? Like everywhere we go, are they there?
There's lots of them working in our bodies all the time. Those particular ones you mentioned don't really want to attune to the personality because we have impure feelings and thoughts, we have kind of a smell to them, Daskalos says. So they kind of step away, like if we were around somebody with body odor, maybe we wouldn't want to get too close. But their duty to us is perfect. They work in our bodies, keeping our metabolism. They're dematerializing cells, rematerializing cells. I think it's like 2 million cells a second. Mm-hmm. Are dematerialized and materialized, and that's one of their roles, is to oversee the function of that. Uriel coordinates all the others, but that's their job. So they love us, of course, they love us. But the guardian angel is the most near and dear, and he's at one with us. He does attune to our personality and soul cells, so he's with us as a protector and guide, and totally loving.
That's interesting, because a lot of the texts that I've read. They pray, well, not really pray, but invoke or evoke the angels to help protect them, and I never thought of it was a bad thing to help. In fact, I remember telling you a story, and even Ramon in the chat room, about how I got the cat to come home by asking Uriel for help, and that's actually worked 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. And
it is amazing.
I feel kind of guilty afterwards, like, maybe, I always say thank you and stuff like that, but it's like, I don't know why I'm feeling guilty, because, Uriel's always there. I don't know. I shouldn't feel guilty about that kind of stuff, but I do, because I feel like Uriel's got better things to do than help me get the cat to come home,
Well, it certainly does, but one of the bigger things that you're shown here is that he's showing you that he's there.
Right, and I'm sure you can feel the love I have for the cat as well, so I'm hoping anyways. But I've definitely, since I've talked to you, I've definitely taken the red pill, but I'll have to admit that the blue pill seems kind of nice, because this seeking wisdom and stuff, and talking to all these different people, Daniel, and there's so many different beliefs and so many different teachings and people that get polar about things that if I was to really think about it and take it all in, my mind becomes extremely perplexed. And sometimes I feel like that book in Ecclesiastes where he tells you, the more wisdom I was seeking, the more sorrowful I became, and it's, I don't know, at some point I think you got to stop and just be.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy, especially with the internet today, to get like this spiritual congestion. You get so much information, but that's why in our system, the teachings and the practices go hand in hand. They're like two legs that you need to use to walk forward. Just getting a bunch of knowledge, it just feeds your egotism at the end of the day, unless you do something with it, unless you start proving it to yourself, as I said in the early part of this thing about the pill. Unless you test it and prove it to yourself, it's just like you're a jewel collector and you have all these jewels you collected, but you're not living it. So the real important part is to start living it. You can't live it all, obviously, so you got to pick something. Pick what you resonate with.
Do you think that that Krishna was real, or was that just a story too? I think Krishna was real. That's just my opinion.
I think there was a Krishna. I don't know that he was 12 feet tall and blue, but I don't know about that. But I do think that, God has always sent his prophets and enlightened ones to the planet to help us in every culture and every time. So the trouble is that they become mythologized. So a lot of what we know of Krishna is just could be it is a bunch of mythology that's been added on to maybe a real being, So it's hard to tell after so many thousands of years what it really was. Yeah. But even just like there's, you heard Pope John Paul II, right? Well, there was this Pope John Paul I back in, 1400s or something. And he was an orphan. And he wanted to know, who were my parents? So he went back to this town where he knew he was born, and he tried to find his parents. And in the process, he met a girl, and he fell in love with her. And they, I don't think they married, but they had sex and maybe even a child. And in the process, while he's living with her, he finally finds out who his parents are. And it turns out his parents were brother and sister. And that's why they put him up for adoption.
Oh.
And it keeps going on farther. And finally, he discovers this girl he's with is his sister. So he's just repeated the thing his parents made. And so he kind of freaks out. So he goes to this island in the Mediterranean, and then he does penance for all these years. And then he comes back, and he ends up being the Pope. Well, the story of him is that he went and he chained himself to a rock. He was found floating in a river in a basket like Moses. And they don't tell the whole story about the brother and sister thing, but he went for penance, and he chained himself to a rock in the middle of the ocean. Well, that's just a myth around this real guy who went to this island to try to sort out what had just happened to him. And yes, he was an orphan, but he wasn't found in a box. So people mythologize people after they pass. So it's hard to know on Christian like
I'm kind of being pulled to ask this question for more than just me. It's something I talked to you about during the break, actually. When I'm by myself, I can do and learn anything and become whatever I want to become as far as these teachings go. It's much easier if I lock myself in a closet and do it on my own. But when we have people that are in our lives that we can't necessarily get rid of, whether they're family or spouse or brother or sister or father or mother, and they have this really negative impact on us, right? It's almost like they're sucking the energy out of you. And I've seen a lot of people call other people vampires and stuff just because they have their own insecurities. But what I'm talking about is it seems like everybody I talk to either has this one, maybe two people in their life that is just really draining the positivity out of their life. And it's always, most of the time, somebody they can't just say bye to, somebody they can't just kick out of their life.
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal and cope with that?
Well, it's obviously they're put in our life for this very purpose. We want to run away from them. There's people that are so full of toxic elementals, or just let's call it negativity, that you just, when you're around them, you just want to run. You want to pry yourself loose and run out the door. Why? It's because these kind of people are really sucking your energy. They're taking that etheric vitality you need. They need it because they're burning theirs up with this negativity in the way just their, let's say, disposition. They burn a long quantity of it, and they need more. So they are able to get it from people if they can entangle themselves with them. So what to do? What to do? Well, the lesson's always the same. It's always the same, and that is they're here in our life so we can learn how to love them. Maybe we don't have to hang around them, but we should never not stop loving. We should try to love them for who they are right now, even though we maybe can't even talk to them or relate to them. They are here in our life to learn how to love. So it's easy to love someone that loves you, right?
Yeah.
But someone that's really, grinding you down, it's hard to love that person. Well, we're supposed to love everyone. That's the whole point. So they're some of our best people, and if you really think about it, don't these people need our love more than our friends?
Yeah, for sure. I've even asked myself in my situation sometimes, it's like, what did I do in my past life to deserve this? Like whatever I did, it must have been horrible. Because in my case, it's a person that I can't really just run away from. So it's a constant vamping,
Yeah, but did you ever think that maybe it's just the opposite of what you just said? That maybe at a soul level, your love was so great for this person, you volunteered to be in their life to try to help them?
No, I never thought of it that way.
Could be. A lot of people come into somebody's life and deal with the most horrible kind of people just because at the soul level, we all love each other anyway. So we're trying to learn how to do that at the personality level too. And we need those people that challenge us. They really are some of our best teachers. If we get caught and start fighting back and we just end up in a polarity with them, not so much, because then we're trapped. But if we can really pull that off, there's great advancement in that.
So think of it more like a challenge on, I see what you're saying. Like it's easy to love somebody that's lovable and that's very easy to love. Like my cat or my son, very easy to love. But this may take time and real effort. So it would be a great accomplishment. I see what you're saying. Because I've definitely gotten polar with them, and that did not work out.
It never works because you just feed the energy into the unhealthy dynamic. And that's really what we're going to be talking about in this seminar on love in Massachusetts in a couple of weeks. It's about loving. What's this mean? Well, like I said, it's so easy to love someone that loves you. So what's that? Well, that's ego, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I love them because they love me. I love that person because they think of me the way I like to be thought of. You'll find parents who say, oh, I love my children. I sacrifice so much for them. And the moment they don't do what the parent thinks they should be doing, their love evaporates. That's not love. Well, it's a love. We call it love by reflection. We love people who give us what we want. But it's not real love. It's just love by reflection. And I'm not saying relationships that fulfill each other's needs is not good, but one that's totally based on getting something from the other person that feeds your egoism, that's not real love. And what happens is if you find somebody that starts hating you, it usually means, it really always means, that person is not getting their egoism fed as they expected to. Or we could say hatred is wounded love, maybe. But the point of it is they're not getting their egoism fed, so they turn on you.
Wow. I've just never looked at it that way. And you know what? If I was to do introspection every night like I should, I think everybody should practice this. Introspection is a practice where Daniel was talking about before. Do you do it before you go to sleep? Because that's when I usually do it, when I do it. as I just think about the entire day and all of the things I did and said and all of the effects and causes of the day, and to try to, I guess, tell myself what I could have done better. And that really does help, you know, instead of just falling asleep and letting it all go and then doing the same thing the next day and wondering why the same thing keeps happening to you.
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, you start, you know, doing it at the end of the day. And the next thing you notice is that, wow, right after one of those events, you start doing introspection immediately, like, wow, that didn't go so good. What could I have said that would have made it better? Or what did I did that really agitated this person? How could have I improved? Then the next thing you'll know is while the thing is going on, you'll start to do introspection in the middle of the event. And then the final stage is you'll walk down the street and you'll start to see this person you have difficulties with or something, and you'll start to introspect on how this could go before you even start talking to them. So pretty soon, introspection is just ongoing thing all the time.
Yeah, I think I do that already. Well, we as far as like this person I'm around, I anticipate it before it happens. That's the frustration of it, Daniel. Even when I've tried so many things, but I guess I'll just keep trying, you know. If I love them, then it's got to be worth it. It's got to be. Yeah, I mean, but you know, some people you just can't be close to. It's like I was saying on the break. It's like really people in our lives are like planets orbiting around the sun. Each one has its own orbit. So sometimes some people you have to have a very distant orbit with them to keep the balance and harmony. Because the planets are always in balance and harmony, no matter what their distance is or what their size is. The laws of physics guarantee that there's always a balance there. That's why they don't go flying out into space. And it's the same thing with personalities. If you can find that proper balance, that proper orbit, that's great. Daskalos had these people in his neighborhood who were just nobody liked them. They were just complainers, blamers. They were just really negative people. But Daskalos, you know, he had the ability to know what was going on in everybody's mind and life in the neighborhood by his consciousness. And he knew that sometimes these people didn't have enough money to eat, to really buy food. And so, unbeknownst to them, he would sneak and put money in an envelope and put it under their door. And he did this for years, from time to time. All of a sudden, one day, these people, and they're these kind of people where nobody can get along with them because they're so negative. So one day these people show up at his front door with the police. And they come in and the police says, well, these people claim you stole something from them. Well, Daskalos said, no, and I didn't steal any from them. And as a matter of fact, I was been the one that's put this money under the door, and he gave the dates of when these people received the money. And the people just melted to realize that this was their benefactor, not someone who was taken from them. Wow.
And they fell on the floor. One guy went down on his knees and said, please forgive me. He says, I don't need to forgive you. I love you. It's okay. It's okay. And they said, can we come and visit you? He said, it's better you don't. So it doesn't mean that they have to move in with us. It's just better. He didn't want to have contact with them. It was better that you don't. So sometimes we have people where we just, you know, close family members, obviously we're tied to them a little bit more than neighbors, but we are tied a lot more to them than neighbors, but by the law of cause and effect. But you have to find a way. But sometimes it's just not to be around them too much. It's a better orbit.
Well, Daniel, I really want to thank you for spending time with us. We got just 2 minutes here left. And if you don't mind telling everybody how they can find your websites and your books.
The book and the online courses and the seminars are on thewhale.us. Thewhale.us. The main website is researchersoftruth.org. We have free audio and there's a video and some written lessons on researchersoftruth.net. It's free, but you have to register to sign into the site. And then we have some free podcasts at researchers.podbean.com. Researchers.podbean.com.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us again. I can't wait to do it again down the road. These conversations have always helped me, and I know for a fact they've helped my audience too. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Joseph.
Absolutely. You guys, that's the end of the show. Don't forget, we're going to